Hi, in this video I am going to talk about two more in situ conservation methods, national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. National park, most of you have gone to a national park sometime. Uh, National park is an area which is strictly reserved for protection of wildlife. The main aim is to protect the wildlife in situ. The areas with the ecological, geomorphological or natural significance with rich fauna and flora are selected as national park. As we discussed earlier, it coming under IUCN category 2 protected area. Activities like grazing, hunting, forestry or cultivation are not allowed inside a national park. It is created and protected by national government. And in India, we have about 104 national parks. And for a national park, the minimum size should be 1000 hectares. It has statutory legal protection. It is created just like biosphere reserves. It is created by the legislation. So all the restrictions in a national park is by law, and breaking that law leads to the legal action. And it also have budget and staff for maintaining the national park. It prohibits exploitation of natural resources. Inside the national park, the exploitation of wildlife and other natural resources are prohibited. But public recreation and ecotourism is allowed in a limited way. Importance of national park. It protects natural biodiversity along with its underlying ecological structure and supporting environmental system. It's an in situ conservation practice. It helps in the conservation of wide range of species, regional ecological process, and the migration routes. It is it actually helps in the sustenance resource use by indigenous peoples and local communities. In the national park, they will reserve the wild resources for the uh, indigenous communities and local communities, so that no other peoples are able to exploit these resources. So, as these populations are small in nature, it will be their exploitation will be sustainable nature, will be sustainable. And most of these places also having the options for ecotourism and recreational activities, so these local communities will be benefited from this. It contributes to the local economies through the ecotourism, as the tourist peoples are coming there, so their economies will be getting better. It promotes research, education, and recreation, just like the biosphere reserve. But when compared to the biosphere reserves, these are a little bit relaxed than that. Key roles. It is protecting large scale ecological process which is important for the human life. It is protecting compatible ecosystem services. It is protecting particular species that require relatively large undisturbed area, just like tigers, as they are on top in the food chain. It need a huge geographical area for its survival. So those type of animals can be protected in national parks. Surrounding land and water uses are integrated into the large-scale conservation plans, so that the sustainable development is possible. It helps in inform and educate the need for potential conservation programs and the importance of biodiversity. It is support compatible economic development, mostly through recreation and tourism. So all of these practices are focusing on benefiting the indigenous communities and local communities. Then only we will be able to devise or practically do the biodiversity conservation. In India, we have several national parks. In India, Kerala also we have many. Irivikulam, then Silent Valley, Periyar Valley. These are all the national parks in Kerala. So in India, you can find many. Next is wildlife sanctuaries. There is difference between the national park and wildlife sanctuaries. Basically, the national parks will be more restricted. Entry and tourism, everything will be more restricted in national park. Wildlife sanctuaries will be more relaxed. And most of the wildlife sanctuaries may be focusing on a small group of organisms, but national parks will be considering the whole ecosystem. But there are so many similarities also there. These wildlife sanctuaries are the areas reserved for wildlife habitats, and their surroundings are protected. Capturing, killing, and poaching is strictly prohibited in wildlife sanctuaries. They are protecting, propagating, and developing wildlife along with its natural habitat. In these wildlife sanctuaries, rare and endangered species are protected. They are focusing on that, but national parks are protecting the whole ecosystem. But wildlife sanctuaries are doing the same, but their focus is in the rare and endangered species. It has ecological, floral, natural, geomorphological, and zoological significance. In these wildlife sanctuaries, collection of forest product and cultivations are restricted. It is not prohibited; it is restricted. So, in some areas they will allow this type of practices. Uh, they have the controlled biotic interactions in is permitted in the sanctuaries. Then it allows visitors for tourism and for recreation. It is a IUCN Category 4 protected area. National Parks is a Type 2 protected area. It was Type 4 protected area. In India, we have 553 wildlife sanctuaries. And in India, area can be designated as wildlife sanctuaries by state government, but national park is designated by central government. And along with that, in India we have 41 tiger reserves. This is a type of wildlife sanctuary which is focusing on the well-being of tiger and the conservation of biodiversity in a tiger population. So under the tiger project, we have 41 tiger reserves. Including that, we have 553 wildlife sanctuaries in India. Importance: it protects endangered species in their natural environment. Strict monitoring of wildlife to prevent hunting and other type of activities. Their strict monitoring is there. Breeding and releasing to the wild, but national parks not really do that, but the wildlife sanctuaries are engaged in that. They can actually breed the endangered species in some way to preserve genetic diversity. If they found some injured animals, they are rehabilitated. Then conservation of biodiversity. It is also engaged in education, training, and research, especially related to the endangered species and the ecosystem and their habitat. Protection of humans and predators. If the endangered animal, we are protecting the endangered animals from the humans and other type of predators. Ecotourism is also practiced in these wildlife sanctuaries. In India, we have so many wildlife sanctuaries. So, if you look at Kerala, we have Neyyar, Anamalai, Periyar, Wayanad. These all are wildlife sanctuaries. We have animal sanctuaries and wild plant sanctuaries. These sanctuaries may be focusing on wildlife sanctuaries or exotic animal sanctuaries or companion animal sanctuaries, which is for the for the companion animals, or farmed animal sanctuaries. The companion animal sanctuaries is for the dogs and cats, like for the companion animals. Uh, these companion animal sanctuaries are not common in our nation, but in foreign countries, these companion animals may be after some age they will be taken into the companion animal sanctuaries. There is also farmed animal cat sanctuaries. These two are for the rehabilitation of the, or like just an old age home for these companion animals and farmed animals. But the first one, wildlife sanctuaries, can be for specific animals. Exotic animals is also for the rare species. There is also wild plant sanctuaries. They are also called the genie sanctuary. It houses many rare species of plants. It supports native pollinators related to the plants. In India, we have one wild plant sanctuaries, which is called Garo Hills of Meghalaya, which is a wildlife sanctuary for citrus plants. This table is actually giving the comparison between national park and wildlife sanctuary. National park is a protected territory that is formed by the government bodies to preserve wildlife and evolve them. Wildlife sanctuary is a natural habitat is run by the government bodies or the private organization. that protect certain species of animals or birds. So national park is protecting everything, wildlife sanctuary is protecting certain species. And in India, national park is run by this central government, wildlife sanctuaries is run by the state government. National park preserve fauna, flora, historic objects, landscape, etc. Wildlife sanctuaries preserve birds, animals, insect, reptile. It is actually restricted to the wildlife. National park can be for anything. Uh, the national park is protecting historic and natural objects along with the wildlife. But wildlife sanctuaries is concentrated on particular wildlife, maybe endangered or rare species. Uh, National park is highly restricted and people cannot randomly access it. But wildlife sanctuaries has restriction, but not as much as the national park. For entering a national park, official permission is required, but wildlife sanctuaries can be accessed without an official permission. You can take a ticket and go into there. Then, for national park, boundaries are fixed by administration, but wildlife sanctuaries, the boundaries are not that much fixed. Then the national parks, human activities is not at all permitted, but in wildlife sanctuaries, human activity is permitted yet to a specific limit. Some areas there will be local settlements or the indigenous population will be growing in the will be living in the wildlife sanctuaries. Other than this wildlife sanctuaries, there is conservation reserves and community reserves. Uh, these are the protected area, serves as a buffer zone or migration corridors for the animal. This will the buffer zones, as we discussed in the biosphere reserves, these conservation reserves and community reserves helps to protect the core area. And sometimes we have the migratory corridors due to the habitat fragmentation. Animals and plants are not animals and birds are not able to cross the human habitation. So we have some migratory corridors. They are protected under these reserves. Uh, these are actually seen in the national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and reserves and protected areas. So it will be protecting the core area from disturbances. Conservation reserves are uninhibited and completely owned by the government of India. In India, the conservation reserves are actually owned by government, but the community reserves, as the name implies, these are either the government land or the private land. But activities in this community reserves is restricted. So that's the difference between conservation reserves and community reserves.